Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 6th episode of the Avocado Gamescast, the AV Club After Dark's gaming podcast. I'm Merve, and we have a great podcast lined up for you today. We'll be talking about video game marketing, and we're going to conclude with a special trivia challenge, provided that the trivia challenge actually works. But first, let's meet the people who are joining me today. First up, he wants to bring back Suikoden, it's PT.
And I hope that there is no pachinko game already made by Konami, essentially. I don't really want to Google that.
You might want to keep your fingers off the Google. Might be disappointed.
No, not disappointed, just understood.
Yeah. Next up, he probably has strong opinions about Berserk. It's Otakunomike.
Berserk, any other anime, yeah, they're all opinions.
Indeed they are. And finally, he's 2 letters short of a fraternity. It's TheKappa.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, so how are y'all doing today?
Not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not bad. No, is anybody at the level of excellent?
Not yet.
Not yet. Not today. Wait till like 6 p.m. Comes around.
Maybe. It's just kind of a typical Sunday afternoon.
Once I actually start sleeping at night again, maybe.
Yeah, I've heard of this thing called sleep that I should do. I'm not really sure how to do it, though. I should try it sometime. All right, so that we can get acquainted with everyone, why don't we start by sharing what we're playing at the moment, or what we've been playing recently. PT, what have you been playing?
Nothing exactly new, honestly. Granted, I've been in the moving process to a new apartment. Just got in here 2 days ago, and so I've just really not been really attached to playing anything new. But it's been kind of an emulation sort of day. I had briefly mentioned last podcast that I was playing Xenosaga Saga Episode 3, and I did finish that. And that has I had forgotten how dumb the last hour and a half of that game is. And I can't honestly wait for the Let's Play, which I'm following, to get to that point so I can have my opinions about how religious symbolism gone wrong in that game. Because, boy, I don't even want to spoil it. It's just so silly. And plus, it wouldn't make any sense in the context of this podcast.
I'm pretty sure Xenosaga doesn't make sense in any context.
No, it really doesn't.
That's fair.
There's a lot. It's just a lot of those characters. A lot of the characters are just frustrating. Part of it is because the game was essentially compressed into 3 as opposed to the planned 6, and a lot of it is just, what are you doing? Why for the last 3 episodes or the whole series have you been just a guy talking just this mumbling nonsense the whole goddamn game? And I guess you're part of the end now. I guess and it's just it's so frustrating.
It's kind of like an asshole. It just comes out of nowhere and saves the day or does something important.
Kind of, but it's just ugh. Other than that, while I was on the road, waiting in rest stops and such, I was actually playing on my new 3DS. I was playing Zelda Link to the Past again, which that's always a good time. And it's made me realize how I need to get more into portable gaming. There have been times where I've had to stop myself from buying a Vita online just for the PS1 classics, because I just feel that, boy, it'd be so great if I could play JRPGs on the road or smaller games. And it's no, dude, you can't justify that in any way. Plus, the memory cards are
really expensive.
Just stupid expensive. I don't understand how Sony is just been crazy with their proprietary stuff.
Sony's engineers they really like to push their technologies because they have so many engineers at that company who hold a lot of sway.
Zelda is Zelda. It's actually Link to the Past is fun in that you don't really have to do the game in order except for towards the very beginning. So it's always fun to say, well, I'll go to this dungeon, next and such. The popular way to do the Dark World dungeons is 1, which is essentially required, followed by 4, because then you can get the power myths or whatever, and then get the level 3 sword, and then just clear the lower dungeons with much easier. So it's Link Between the Worlds was kind of the same way in that yeah, you could do them in any particular order, and it actually made things fun. But I mean, even more fun. But the game in particular, I was actually playing a lot. In fact, I was just playing, before we recorded. If you were hearing all those punching sounds in the background, was the Wii Punch Out. I've been still messing around with Dolphin, and hadn't ever got to that. And I really, really do like that game. It's certainly different enough from the previous two games. It's kind of a mixture, kind of a merge. It's really difficult in places. I'm very, very happy that there's a practice mode where I could just go fight the next boxer on the list as opposed to just losing 20 times in a row.
So is that, do you have it set up with motion controls, like the sensor bar attached to the computer and everything?
No, I'm using in the game itself just the Wii mode simple 2-button setup, and I'm using a 360 controller. But yeah, I've heard that just doing with the nunchuck and having to actually throw a left hook, and I'm just like, no, I'm good. I don't really like motion controls all that much as such. But I mentioned this in a very, very small avocado thread a couple days ago, but one of last gen gaming's minor fun moments was the idea that Glass Joe could kick your ass in the most recent Punch Out. Because after you finish the game the first time, after you go through the first string of boxers, after you beat Mr. Sandman, who's the big champion, who's actually pretty good in this game, you go into title defense mode, where you fight everybody again, but they have new abilities or ways to cover their flaws from the previous fight. And in Glass Joe's case, he now has a helmet, because which you cannot jab because it will just be blocked. And then he's got all these delayed jabs and stuff, and he's actually really difficult. So for people who have played those games forever, and it's Glass Joe, yeah, I knock him out in 7 seconds flat. The fact he can kick your ass is kind of a fun little Easter egg of sorts. But beyond that,
yeah, an inversion of what you'd expect.
No, definitely. And I was practicing against Piston Hondo as opposed to Honda. I don't know why they changed his name earlier, and it's just lots. The game is very, very focused on timing, and it expects you to counterpunch. It expects you to know timing, to counterpunch to get stars. I mean, the original game wasn't so much about that. Super Punch-Out was sort of testing you. Sure, you can counterpunch, and it'll be a lot easier, but it's not, going to be a big problem. But this game expects you to get really technical, and that's kind of why I'm struggling so hard on it. I can imagine. Though as someone who never beat Mike Tyson in the original game, yeah, Super Punch-Out is the easiest game of all the planet.
Well, Tyson was impossible to beat. He knocked you out in one punch the first 90 seconds of each round?
Yeah, you had to survive the first 90 seconds or so, and then he started throwing jabs, and then that was your go-to. But
yeah, there's a reason it's a Games Done Quick staple, because it actually takes a lot of skill to beat.
Sinister actually beat it blindfolded the last Games Done Quick, I believe.
Oh, wow. That is impressive.
Which is crazy. But anyhow, that's kind of what I've been playing mostly. All fun stuff.
Yeah, a lot of older games. Otakunomike, what have you been playing?
Well, I've just been finishing up Tokyo Mirage Stories. I actually beat it last week, and then I restarted because I did New Game Plus. And, of course, there's requests you can only do in New Game Plus, so I had to go back and do that.
So how have you been liking it? It's Tokyo Mirage Sessions, right?
Sessions, yeah.
Yeah. How have you been enjoying that?
I liked it, but it's also super Japanesey. I mean, really Japanesey. If you can't take, the anime Japanese infusion, it's going to get old fast.
Mm.
That being said, it is also kind of a throwback to some of the kind of older JRPGs, which for somebody who's been around for a while, I like that. There's just something classic about just the way you go through the dungeons. The New Game Plus, though, has been easy because you can restart with all your levels, and even on hard difficulty, the first half the game's pretty easy when you're level 65. Something about that lets you just blitz through it.
Yeah, I I can see why that would make it a lot easier.
It gives you an option to start with the lunatic mode, which you can only do in New Game Plus, but you don't get your levels on that. And I figure I didn't want to spend another 85 hours to beat the game again. So
yeah, because you need to grind probably to beat that.
Other than that, I actually did pick up Mankind Divided. Unfortunately, I only got like an hour of the way into the game, so I've kind of been playing that. I just haven't had time to dig deep into that.
Yeah, I've been
That
playing
might be a
that
common
too.
theme.
It's a fun one.
Yeah. So I've heard. As a preview to this.
Wait, Kappa, you've been playing Mankind Divided.
I'm trying
right?
to. I've been trying to. Yeah, I
So
mean,
let's talk about your adventures in trying to play.
I
Mankind.
mean, it runs. I don't want to get anybody too messed up, but the PC port is just abysmal. And one of the things I've been really mad about and kind of raging on about in the comments is that I only really pulled the trigger on this one after I read about 3 different places that said the port was perfect. Just a perfect port. Everything about it is great.
I haven't had any problems with the port. My biggest problem, aside from just time in general, at least that first opening level, I kept getting really bad motion sickness with the color bloom in the desert, which is something I've had in other games, although not original Deus Ex.
Did messing around with the view help at all?
There's an option in the view to, affect the motion sickness. I tweaked a little bit. I mean, I can play for like an hour or two at a time and be fine. Twilight Princess did this to me really bad too, so I just got to tweak the settings a little more and try a few other things. Also, finding more time in general.
Yeah. So Kappa, what have you been trying to do to get it to run?
I mean, there's a lot of, if you look around on the internet, there's a lot of little weird adjustments and hacks and things. Basically, the optimization's pretty poor. One of the big issues being with the MSAA, just absolutely crippling anything that's short of, I don't even know, SLI 1080s maybe.
Yeah, I turned off the MSAA.
Yeah.
And immediately went from like the sections that were dropping down to 20 frames per second just went up to like 80.
Yeah. So that was one thing, and then the other thing I had to do was disable volumetric lighting, and I think the other thing was contact hard shadows, were some of the other things. But I mean, all in all, it's a very good-looking game. But when it's so poorly optimized, that kind of takes away some of the benefits of being such a good-looking game, right? I mean, who cares if it looks great if you can't play it? That's kind of 101.
No, what kind of video card do you have to run it?
I have SLI 980s, which
okay.
SLI
you should be getting top of the line performance.
Exactly. I mean, but SLI is its own kind of thing. I mean, usually at launch, I'm very used to this by now, by having SLI for a while now. Usually the SLI profiles aren't perfect, so they've got to take some time to be adjusted. And sometimes they never are perfect. I mean, when I play Dragon Age Inquisition, I actually disable a card, just because I get better everything just with one rather than two. But what I'm finding more and more with Deus Ex is, even with everything dropped down the way it is, I'm getting some kind of error with memory utilization, with actual system memory, which I don't understand at all. I've never had that issue with games before. I'm only getting.
I haven't heard anybody report memory leaks for this game.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I'm up to about 32 gigs of system memory, so that's plenty. But I can only play for about an hour and a half until the game itself just kind of slowly starts to get worse and worse and worse, and eventually drops out. I'm wondering if it has something to do with like shadow play, NVIDIA's shadow play, which I always just leave on just because I like to record cool moments. I could try disabling that. I've heard people say that disabling in the recent Windows 10 update, it turns automatically on the Xbox recording service. So I might try to disable that. There's a couple other things I can do. I don't know why I'm running low on system memory, but I'm going to fiddle with it a little bit more probably tonight and see if I can get it running acceptably. But part of me is saying, if I'm playing with all this stuff disabled and all these things turned down, why don't I just wait till the DirectX 12 patch that's supposed to hit next week?
Week of September 5th.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I might just wait a week and play it. Hopefully, DirectX 12 fixes a lot of those types of optimization things, so might just wait. I don't know. I'm kind of back and forth on it. I've made it to Prague 3 times, so I've got that first part really nailed down. Really know how to do everything there. I'm playing it on Give Me Deus Ex difficulty. I still think it's too easy. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure the enemies get a lot harder, but I was expecting actually a little bit more difficulty. I'm playing a lethal playthrough too, which I just find fun. I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of people.
Are you doing it stealthy or guns blazing?
Oh no, I do like the. I talk about this a lot, but did you guys ever play Splinter Cell Blacklist?
No, I haven't, but
I played a little of Double Agent, but I don't think I played Blacklist.
Well, one of the cool things they did in that game was, there's like, so if you think about stealth games, there's like the pacifist and there's like the kill everybody, right? Splinter Cell introduced this kind of like middle style of playthrough. I think they called it Panther style or something like that. They all had, it was like Bear, Panther, and I don't remember, Snake or something like that. But the idea being that if you play, you get kills, but they're like stealthy kills. So like you kill people but hide the body and things like that. And it's honestly the way I love to play stealth games. These are bad people, right? I mean, most of the time, like you don't deserve to like punch them once in the face and then walk away. So yeah, I like to kill them, but I like to be stealthy about it, hide the bodies, do things like that. And Deus Ex really provides you a lot of tools for doing that. The only thing that's frustrating is I don't know are you guys playing with controllers or not?
Mouse and keyboard. I am not a controller person at all.
There's 3 or 4 different levels of the controller, right? I'm playing. I think the one I'm playing with is like standard FPS controls, if you want to think about it. But so if you tap in on the right stick, you do your melee knockout. If you hold in, you do the lethal kill. And it just seems kind of pointless to me. Like why can't I hold like left trigger and push it or something? Because I'm always constantly, I can imagine if you were trying to do a non-lethal playthrough, just holding it in half a second too long and getting a kill and having to restart a whole level would probably drive me crazy. But luckily for me, that's not my problem. But yeah, game it looks great even on when I'm playing it on. It's been pretty fun so far. I don't know. Me and poorly optimized games just really don't get along.
Yeah, I think one of the problems is that, like you said, you had the same problem with Dragon Age Inquisition. It's because those are AMD optimized games, and if you're running NVIDIA's with SLI as opposed to AMD's with Crossfire, they're not going to prioritize you, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's the state of gaming right now. I mean, I don't complain about it when NVIDIA, which is usually the case, gets a good deal and optimizes the games for themselves. But every now and then you'll get an AMD game that just comes along, and I mean, what can you do? It's the way it is right now. I know a lot of people complain about saying, well, this isn't fair, but it makes sense. I mean, you gotta set yourself apart somehow when it comes to graphics cards, and really that's the only way to do it right now is through. Like I want to say exclusives, but it's really not. It's more like development assistance, I guess.
I mean, they implement like these exclusive features, right? So I remember not the old Tomb Raider, the 2013 Tomb Raider had this hair
Tress FX
animation called Tress FX, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Tress FX looked like garbage, by the way. It basically looked like somebody had plastered a brown old Windows screensaver to the back of Lara's head.
Oh, cool.
And it just like cut my frame rate down to like a third of what it was. So I disabled it. And at that time I was running an AMD card, and the rest of the game looked spectacular. But that one exclusive AMD effect actually looked like garbage, which I thought was really funny. Sorry?
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure we could run an entire topic on just unnecessary effects that ruin the play speed of games. Like if you ever do a Total War game, there are so many unnecessary effects you could do in Total War that's going to ruin your performance.
Yeah, it looks good like one time, and the rest of the time it just runs horribly. Yeah. So I mean, optimization is one of those, like, I don't know. It's one of my things. My issues, I guess. I have lots of games where if it's poorly optimized, I feel like there's not much I can do, and I'd rather just wait and see where a couple patches take the game. Usually, I mean, most games I think end up getting fixed, but like I said with Dragon Age, it's still to this day not totally optimized for SLI, which is weird, but I mean, okay.
Yeah, it depends on where developers choose to prioritize in the end, and unfortunately sometimes they choose to fix what affects the most people instead of
I would. I'll never SLI again, honestly. Next time, if I'm going to shell out this much, I'm just going to get the equivalent of a Titan or like that level of item, of video card. I'll never SLI again. It's been a huge mistake.
Bridging video cards is really useful for people who do things like graphical rendering.
Right.
Then they'll shove 4 video cards in one machine and then it works really well for stuff like that. For gaming, though, they've never been able to really make it work. In fact, one of the biggest problems with SLI and Crossfire is that if you're bridging multiple cards together, you get the processing power of all those cards, but you only get the RAM of one of the cards.
Right.
It feels like we should be able to harness all of it, but because of the way graphical architecture works, you just can't.
What I like, and this is like kind of getting way out of it, but what I like is if you ever play like the GTA 5 port of the PC port, one of the good things it does is it shows you what each option has. Like if you turn on, MSAA, it shows you what effect it has on the card that you're trying to pull from. Which is kind of interesting because if you flip an option on, you really have no idea of what it's impacting in terms of is this making a big difference, a little difference, small difference, and you have to kind of keep running through all those tweaks. But GTA 5 did a great job of showing exactly what options have impact on the memory usage of your card. And it made it actually kind of really simple to go through and say, okay, well, I can live without this, and I need this all the way cranked up, and see what it does to the memory usage on the cards.
That would be a very handy feature. I think more PC ports should include should include benchmarking tools. Like that's the one thing Mankind Divide is missing. It's missing a benchmarking tool, which is unfortunate for a guy like me who likes to tweak the settings to get them exactly like how I want them. Because I usually disable things like VSync because I don't care much about it, and I actually have a G-Sync monitor now, so of course I'll turn off VSync if I have a variable refresh rate. Yeah, I wish more video games had these kinds of user-friendly tools that allowed you to figure out exactly what the impact on performance was. All right, so as for what I've been playing, I've also been playing Deus Ex. Seems like there's a common theme here.
It's like the game just came out or something.
Yeah.
I only have
isn't it?
a GTX 660 of 2 gigs, so I kind of said, nope, I'm going to wait for a video card upgrade.
So I've been playing Deus Ex. The other games I've been playing, I recently finished Grow Up, sort of Fumblecore-ish platformer that Ubisoft recently put out, I think last week or the week before last. I know I've talked about its predecessor, Grow Home, on the podcast before, but just to refresh people's memory, the idea is that you're a robot who can walk around normally, but in order to climb structures, the way you climb them is you use the left trigger to control your left hand and the right trigger to control your right hand. And by moving your hands back and forth with the triggers, that's how you climb up structures. And in this particular game, the point is to grow a series of plants by reaching the top of the plant, and then you press a button and it grows the plant even higher. The point is to climb up these beanstalk-like plants to grow them to reach the moon. So it's a fun little game. I enjoyed it. It has some weird issues with the camera, but other than that, I think it's a charming little game. You'll get a good 5-6 hours of fun out of it if you play it. The other game I've been playing on the PS4 is Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth. It's really hard to talk about that game without getting into the minutia of Digimon, and I could talk about digivolving my Digimon and de-digivolving them for days on end, but that would interest about maybe 3 people. So I'm going to skip that discussion and say, Otakunomike was talking earlier about games that are very Japanese. This is also a game that is very, very Japanese, in that it's not even fully localized. It has English subtitles, but all of the voices are still in Japanese, because I guess they didn't want to shell out for English voice actors.
And I'm sure the target audience would rather have that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm about to say something heretical right now. I prefer dubs to subs.
Oh no, I do too. I mean, I think it's kind of a silly cop-out that many companies do that. I mean, I really, really do fear the Persona 5 localization. I fear they're just going to go full, this audience and then shut out a lot of more casual players, and it's just going to be just unreadable for me. And it's just
I feel like they're going to do it. I feel like they're going to do it like they did Persona 4, which I think was the right balance of keeping in things like the honorifics, but still putting everything in English slang.
I always thought
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I thought Tokyo Mirage Sessions kept everything subtitled because there is so many songs in that game. You try and dub it when you got so many voice actors singing, it ain't gonna work right.
Yeah, I mean, for subs work well for some games. Digimon doesn't have any singing in it, for better
I
or
wouldn't
for worse.
imagine.
Yeah, I mean, they have songs. If you ever watched the anime, they have songs, and they actually made English equivalents of all those songs. Um, I mean, confession time. I have the Digimon the movie soundtrack, so I have like all the songs in my music library. It's like a CD I got like 15 years ago too. I've never
Let's
grabbed
say,
it.
no
Whatever
bugaboos. No bugaboos are too bad around here. Believe me, we all have our share, I'm sure.
Yeah, we all have our secret shame, or not so secret anymore. So I mean I'm fine with translating or not translating as maybe the case. It's just that Digimon Story in particular doesn't really benefit from being kept subbed, and if they've dubbed it, I think it might have been a little better. But other than that, I'm enjoying the game. It's fun. It's just standard JRPG. It's got this neat setup in that it's very much like an episodic TV series in JRPG form. So it's divided into 20 chapters, and each chapter feels like an episode of television, which is a different setup to what video games usually employ, which is they usually have sort of a movie type setup. Each video game feels like a self-contained movie rather than a semi-serialized sort of procedural television series. So I think that's really neat.
I was going to point out Alan Wake in that regard.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I've never played Alan Wake. So does it do something similar?
Yeah, that game has kind of like this weird episodic structure where there are there's not like credits at the end, but there's like a to be continued and a song based on the chapter of the game you just played, and the next thing right after that it's previously on Alan Wake, and so it's this weird fun episodic structure that they kind of did. I mean, the game itself is meh, but I did kind of appreciate some of its more Twin Peaks-like trappings, obviously.
Yeah, so that's a really neat setup that I think more games should employ. But getting back to Deus Ex, the other game that I've been playing, so I think I'm farther in it than any of you. I'm still in Prague. I think I've played something like 10 hours, and I still haven't done the first major investigation, which is very mild spoilers, which is to investigate the train station bombing.
Okay, that's like basically the intro.
Yeah, so I'm past the train station bombing, but for 10 hours I've just been doing side quests. I haven't even gone to investigate the Ruzicka bombing yet. So what I'll say about the game is that it looks very pretty. Been taking lots of screenshots. What I will say about that is that it's very, very dense. The settings are very detailed. And I will say that the Deus Ex team is very, very good. Eidos Montreal is very, very good at environmental design and making these places feel lived in and somewhat real. But because it's so dense, I'm kind of losing the thread on the main plot. I'm getting distracted. It's partially my own fault. If I really wanted to, I could just go off and do the main quest. But I'm getting so distracted by doing all the side quests and exploring that I'm sort of starting to lose the thread of what's going on in the main plot. Have any of you guys ever experienced that in games at all?
Well, in my case, it was, and I really wasn't enjoying the side quest very much, but like Just Cause 2 was kind of that way. It's like, hey, I'm just going to go run around and just blow up all these things for, I don't know, some reason. And then you bring up these missions and like, what am I doing? Why do I care? Why are these missions so bad? I mean, it's just...
That's the thing about Just Cause 2 is that to unlock missions, you actually have to go around and basically blow stuff up. Otherwise, you can't build up enough chaos to unlock the next mission. It's the open world. It's the Western open world equivalent of JRPG grinding, really.
I was gonna say I'm that weird person that like actually doesn't have a huge problem with like GTA style chaining off of stuff. It's like whatever. There's enough to do, and especially in the case of like, I think it was perfect in GTA 3 where at the time you were just like, wow, this place is huge. I mean, for the time, of course. And then it just slowly expands, and by the end of it, you say, yep, I memorized this thing because I've been given enough time to figure everything out before being told, okay, now you have a new thing to search. So and then there are some people who always say, well, I never play the missions, I just cause havoc. And I've never understood that.
I'm thinking about like the Elder Scrolls and Fallout games and all those sorts of games where like you can get lost in that world and never even think about the main quest, right? I mean, I could even tell you what the main quest of Skyrim really ends up being. I remember way more events on the side quests, and replaying through Fallout, I thought they did a great job of implementing a lot of great ways for you to actually receive the side quests. You guys have all played Fallout 4, right?
No, I've only played New Vegas.
Okay.
No, I've
Well,
actually not.
so now instead of just getting like having to find somebody and talk to them, like you can get missions over the radio. People will come running up to you in the waste and say, "Hey, I heard about you. You're the guy who did this over here. Can you help us out over here?" It feels really like I don't know, like it seems more like your fame, your renown, I guess, grows the more you play, and all the little factions have different ways of getting you back into all these side quests and linking you back to the rest of the world in case you're just spending time wandering around. They throw you these little bones to get you back onto the side quest path, but and I mean as far as the main quest, it's always there. It's just always something you can track, and then the further you get along to it, the more you can do it, but you don't ever have to. That's what I always like about those types of games.
And
I like when there's not. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that was my downfall with Fallout 3 was I got it with the complete Game of the Year edition that had all of the DLC. By the time I finished all those bloody side quests, I had no incentive to finish the main quest.
Yeah. A lot of people get like that. I know a lot of people who say, "Man, I got burned out on the side quests." Like, whenever a friend of mine gets into Dragon Quest Inquisition, the first thing I tell them is get out of the hinterlands as soon as you can. Because if you just sit there and you remember the hinterlands, that first area where it's just huge and there's a million things to do and you run around, you can spend 50 levels there and then the rest of the game is just a joke. But that a lot of people get sucked into that path. They don't want you to, but that's just how people play. I'm going to stay here until I clear this area. And people will do that. They'll stay in the hinterlands way, way, way longer than they should, and they're like, wow, this game's really boring. Everything's really easy. Well, you did all your grinding in like kind of the starting zone if you want to think about it that way, but
Yeah, I mean, so two things about that. I mean, if you run to different corners of the hinterlands, there are higher level enemies that that are very difficult to beat when you're at your initial low level when you're in the hinterlands, and that's the game telling you, hey,
move on,
get out of this area, move on.
Yeah.
And then on that note, there was actually this semi-infamous Reddit post that came out. I don't know if you guys remember this. That was basically called "Leave the fucking hinterlands," and then went on this huge rant about all the things you're missing out on by not leaving the hinterlands and not going back to it later in the game.
Yeah. But I'm not going to fault them for making the hinterlands a great area. I mean, that's genius design in my opinion to have, an area that you keep coming back to and stuff. It's more of like a hub I guess than anything else, but it's huge. It's gigantic. And I mean, you can always come back to it. The game doesn't ever lock you out of there. So yeah, I mean, I don't know why people had a problem with that. Maybe it's just contrary to their own particular play style. But I don't see that as a negative. And so many people cite it as a negative. Oh, all I do is the side quest and I get bored. And I'm like, well, that's on you. That's not on the game itself.
Yeah. So I mean, that's why I'm not leveling the same complaint against Deus Ex, because I'm doing the side quest by choice, and I really should be getting back to the main quest. I mean, right now I'm in some sewer somewhere trying to investigate a hacking, and I really should be, going to investigate the train station bombing. So speaking of Deus Ex, and to segue into our first topic about marketing, it came under some controversy, came under fire for its marketing campaign recently, and so a couple of the things that were in its marketing campaign, it used the slogan "Mechanical Apartheid," and also some key art had the slogan "Augs Lives Matter," and some people criticized Eidos Montreal and Square Enix's marketing team for being insensitive for making these comparisons to real world social issues. So I guess what I'd like to ask you guys is, how do you think video games that deal with these social issues in an allegorical way or brush up against these social issues, how should they shape their marketing around this to avoid that sort of insensitivity?
Well, I think my example would probably be, do you guys remember the game Hatred? You probably
Oh
don't.
yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I remember
The game itself, I don't think anybody ever played, right? Like it was,
Right.
but the way it marketed itself was like diabolically ingenious, right? All they were doing was basically making this really shitty top-down shooter, that's been made a million times, a little dark and gritty. But the way they marketed it, of course, is as this, murder simulator. Go out and kill all the people who have been annoying you in your life, and it really is like one of those games that just makes it feel like you're playing Columbine or you're playing, all these other mass shootings that have been happening. And that game probably never spent 1 cent on marketing because it let all the news organizations and online think pieces and blogosphere do all its advertising for it, right? I mean, so I think in some ways...
So much so that it became the first AO-rated game to be sold on Steam.
Exactly. And I mean, like, that's something that me and you, we all remember, and we've never played 1 second of that game, right? So, hate all you want, but that is some damn effective marketing, right? And I'm not saying that Eidos did that, or Square Enix did it particularly in the case of Deus Ex, but I do believe that when it comes to marketing, it's like any buzz is good buzz, right? I mean, so I don't think they really care as much from a marketing standpoint that people were offended by those sorts of things. And I think that's pretty true across video games ever since they've been being advertised, right? There's always been this little, like, I don't know how to describe it, like Daikatana, right? Like that's the goalpost.
Yeah, John Romero's going to make you his bitch.
Right.
Yeah.
And like that's designed to be offensive. It's designed to get people talking, and I think it's so ingrained with video game advertising that I don't think they care that. I don't think they're caring that people are talking negatively about it as long as they're talking about it. So I mean, I think social issues are something that they're going to use as a marketing tool whenever it can be, and I think it's up to us to say, look, this is not. Like people do with hatred. Like, this is not a cool thing to do, and if it bothers you that much, don't buy it. But, I mean, not to be an apologist for Deus Ex, but I was thinking kind of like, okay, so think about 50 years down the line. We still use slogans in social issues that were created in the 60s, right? Like, it's not uncommon to go to a rally and see an "I Have a Dream" poster or sign or whatever. It's maybe not the same thing, but, if you saw that at an LGBT rally, that wouldn't seem out of place to you, So I could see why some of those themes would be carried forward into a future where AUGs are basically being treated, as, a second society or whatever you want to call it. But I could see why some of those messages get carried forward. But I think that the problem is that what seems insensitive about it right now is it's kind of minimalizing what's really happening in the real world. Like you said, it's tone deaf, but I don't think it's, I don't know. It's hard with marketing to ever really say that if it gets us talking, it's a bad thing.
Yeah. So I mean, to be a little nuanced about this, I wasn't so put off by the whole mechanical apartheid thing. Because, I mean, apartheid is farther in the past, and the word apartheid has been used to describe other social phenomena that have occurred in the world, not just South African apartheid. AUG's Lives Matter, though, is a reference to something that's happening currently,
right?
Very currently, and that makes it a little bit more tone deaf, in my opinion.
Especially since it's happened after the game started marketing, so it's something the marketing team looked at and thought, hey, let's copy this right now.
Yeah, I mean, the game I'm assuming was conceptualized before 2013, and mid 2013 is when the whole Black Lives Matter movement started. So this really must be. I don't buy their story that it was a coincidence. It must be a deliberate marketing choice.
Also grammatically incorrect, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's missing an apostrophe somewhere in there.
I haven't seen that in the game. I mean, there's tons and tons of graffiti in the game that is very along that line, but I haven't seen that other than in a promotional art piece, that AUG's Live Matter thing, anywhere else other than one promotional art piece that was kind of linked to the game. And if I'm remembering right, it's like at like a rally. It looks like, I think it's set in like Moscow or something like that. I mean, it's like two sides squaring
off. Written in Cyrillic.
Yeah, and it's two sides kind of squaring off against each other. Like the police and the people. I don't know. It doesn't feel so much like it's just a phrase they tossed out there. When you actually see the promotional art, it looks like it's at like a rally, at like a protest or something. So it makes a little more sense to me, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm probably apologizing too much for this because I really don't feel like it's a good call, but I can kind of see what they were going for is. But like you're saying, it's way too early. It's way too current right now to really be doing something like that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as bad marketing goes, or tone deaf or offensive marketing, I think this is a fairly mild example. And I know I'm saying this as somebody who is a person of color but is not black, so it's not really my place to say this. But I think it's fairly mild compared to some other examples of tone deaf marketing that I've seen. I mean, going back a few years, do you guys remember that sexy nun trailer for Hitman Absolution?
Yeah, yeah.
See, that's what I'd consider tone deaf marketing.
Yeah, and especially because it's such a weird part of the game itself. Like Hitman has always been, it's been very stylized in a lot of ways, and I know we're going to end up talking a lot about a lot of Japanese companies as we talk about, poor marketing choices, and I don't want to give them a pass, but I wonder how much of it is just kind of not understanding the culture, of which they're marketing to in some ways. But Hitman really, like you're saying, that sexy nun thing, it made no sense because that's not even what I want from Hitman. Like I don't know who it was for.
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say one example of a trailer that was also just kind of mind-boggling for the audience was, I guess EA wanted to attract more, I don't know, hardcore, less hardcore people to Mass Effect 2, so they had that infamous Biotic Bitch trailer, and it was just like, I'm the Biotic Bitch, and I'm extreme, and I'm just like, okay, what's this have to do with Mass Effect other than you're a character class, I guess. I guess he was a bitch.
That was the trailer for Jack.
Oh boy, I don't remember.
It probably was Jack, yeah.
Probably Jack. It seems like she would describe herself as a biotic bitch. Although some might say that applies to Miranda. Who knows?
Yikes.
Yeah. So we just upped this podcast misogyny quotient by like 100%.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Do you remember this is another one that I really thought, like, to me, when you're talking about tone deaf marketing, it's not just that it's making a lot of suppositions of the gamers themselves and kind of painting us in kind of a stupid light as well. Like I'm just gonna buy this because it's sexy or because it's this or because it's that. But one of the dumbest examples I could think of was, do you remember the advertising for Dead Space 2 where they would
oh yeah, this
oh my god,
or something like that?
Yeah, they would show the game to a bunch of moms. And the moms would be like, "Oh my God, this is terrible." It's a horror game, but I mean, I don't know. Dead Space 2 is nothing extreme to me, but they've got all these suburban moms cringing as you dismember the whatever those bad guys were or whatever. And it was just like, what the hell is this even for? Like, what does this advertisement do for me and tell me anything about the game other than some random mom somewhere think the game is scary? That does nothing for me. It was really weird, and it wasn't as negative as a lot of the other stuff we've been talking about. It was just dumb. And
you want to talk about ads that make gamers look bad? I want to say it was either DOA 2 or 3 had an ad which is basically two very stereotypical nerds in their basement giggling over the fact that Kasumi kicks high and all the implications that went with. And that was a TV ad they ran actually on a lot of TV channels for a while.
I remember when I was real young, my dad used to subscribe, for a bunch of those like gaming magazines, and they always had that weird article or that weird ad where it would be like, the one I'm thinking of is a Game Boy ad. I'm almost 90% positive, where there's a woman, she's like tied up to a bed, right? Like obviously, some kind of bondage situation. And it says something like, Nintendo Game Boy, a really serious distraction or something like, and the guy's playing his Game Boy rather than getting on the bed with the woman. I remember my dad seeing that and like, what the hell is this? He didn't know anything about video games or anything, but he's like, this is really dumb. And like ever since then, I remember PS Vita had a similar one. That's a very a recurring theme in a lot of stuff where it's like the sexy girl getting ignored while guys play video games.
I just linked it there in the message thing, but I was gonna bring up the PSP, the advertising, and there are some pretty damning examples from the PSP alone.
Oh yeah, that's the one that had the they're advertising a new color PSP, like the PSP White.
Yeah.
And it's an image of a white person like strangling a black person.
Yeah. There's
God.
another one when the Vita came out. You remember how the Vita had that capacitive touchscreen on the back of it? The ad was something like, it was like a woman where like she had breasts on both sides, and it was something like, now you can finally enjoy both sides or something like that. I was like, the hell is like, where does that come from? It's so weird.
So disgustingly misogynist. It's so disgustingly misogynist that it just loops right back around to being stupid again.
Yeah, and that's my main thing is like, I think in a lot of ways that pandering to that culture is really one of those weird things about gaming to me. And I mean, like I've said, I really don't like to call myself a gamer because so many of these weird things that come into that are all these types of things. Like, who would see that ad and be any closer to actually buying a product based on that ad? It's just weird to me.
Like, I mean, if you insult my intelligence like that, I'm less likely to buy your product.
Absolutely.
And maybe I'm a minority in that regard. Maybe, if you sell, I know sex sells in general, and I'm not immune to it, but maybe if you give it to the general audience, they eat it up. But it just feels so stupid to me.
When you're talking about sex and attraction, it remind me of that really atrocious Dead or Alive 3 ad that was for the original Xbox, where this one guy is just a stereotypical geek, says, well, I love the fighting engine and it's all the great counters and such, and the other guy says, she kicks high.
I mean, I know you guys like Japanese games a lot more than I do, and I mean, there's a lot there, but I do feel like in a lot of ways they're a little bit behind on some of this type of stuff, especially when you go back. Like, I'm even thinking about, what was that recent dungeon crawler game with the witch that had just like ridiculous.
Dragon's Crown?
Yeah, I mean, like, great game all around, right? From everything I heard about it, but everyone was like, "Why do you have to draw them like this?" It's just, I don't know. I feel like a lot of Western game companies are kind of coming along nicely in their portrayal of women. If I had to say, like, you got the BioWare and the Bethesdas, they're doing a really good job. Some of the Eastern European stuff, like the CDPR, I mean, I still got a lot of problems with Witcher and how it handles women, but it always feels like you're kind of trying to drag a lot of Japanese companies, by the ear, telling them that shit like Quiet is not okay, or like. No.
I mean, culture is different there. That's one thing. But I feel like it's really easy to pick and choose these examples of Japanese games. And not saying that Quiet is or as good or The Witch from Dragon's Crown is any good in its portrayal, but there are a lot of there are a lot of Japanese games that don't do that. And I feel like the most egregious examples tend to come from Japan, and that's what we think of when we think of portrayals of women in Japanese games. But there are a whole lot of other women in Japanese games that you don't immediately think of necessarily. Yeah, so like, for example, like playing Digimon Story right now, most of the main characters in that game are women, and it's all about, like, the villain is a woman, your main advisor is a woman, the person you have on the inside of this evil corporation is a woman. Most of the important characters in that game are actually women, and it's something that I don't think I'd ever see a Western game do. But I mean, that's just one example out of a sea of many. I'm sure there are other Japanese games that aren't like that. But I will say that Japanese games in general are a little more willing to have a cast that is majority women, even if the individual portrayals of said women are what we'd consider slightly regressive by Western standards. So it's a quantity versus quality argument, one might say.
This is kind of a dubious argument, I'll admit, but I do feel that sometimes these companies are just targeting these audience members that are not the type of people we'd want to hang out with, and yet they have the money. They're the people who they might do some 13-episode anime sect thing that runs at, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning, and it might not do very well. But you know what? Those people they're targeting are going to buy the extremely overpriced Blu-rays. which will make it turn a profit and stuff like that.
Yeah, they'll buy the figurines and the body pillows. It's all good.
Like, I really hate to jump into that stereotype, but there's an element of truth to that, and it is kind of upsetting.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to pander to the people who will spend money on your product, who will buy the extended universe stuff and the toys and the trinkets. And in the end, that sort of makes sense. That's where the money is. It's not necessarily in, like, for example, how do bands make money? It's not on selling their music or albums. It's on selling ticket sales to concerts and T-shirts and other merch. And
I'll spare you guys the full essay on it, but the simple answer is the anime industry in Japan does not make money on their shows. They make it on the merchandise. Actually producing TV episodes gets you nothing. So, yeah, in the short answer, you are very right in that regard.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard animators are paid very poorly.
They're paid less than minimum wage in the U.S. It's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've heard, Studio Ghibli is one of the few studios that puts its animators on salary. Pretty much everywhere else, they're just temporary contract workers who are paid like really low wages. Yeah. So getting back to some other tone deaf marketing, maybe moving away from things that are explicitly social issues. I mean, there are other games that have had tone deaf marketing in other ways. Like, I mean, we've talked about this before. Do you guys remember the Anime Fan on Prom Night trailer for Mighty Number 9?
Oh dear.
Yeah, that's another trailer where you look at it and you wonder, what was Deep Silver thinking when they cut this?
They had to get some sort of attraction because that game had been receiving lots of negative buzz, and for good reason, mind you, and because it wasn't getting done. The delays were there. They were spending money on things people didn't really want, and they were stretch goals. And they're like trying to okay, I guess we should get another angle on this. And I don't know why they picked that angle, but they did.
I mean, after that trailer, I've never seen the gaming community more united in wanting a game to fail.
I don't know. No Man's Sky is kind of.
Yeah, so that's the other game. That's segue into No Man's Sky. That's another game that I wanted to mention in terms of its marketing. So we've talked about games that have had questionable marketing from, say, a social standpoint, or marketing that's offended people, marketing that's been tone deaf. But there's also the question of marketing that's dishonest. And a lot of people are accusing Sean Murray and Hello Games of marketing No Man's Sky dishonestly. Have any of you played No Man's Sky? I held off on it because it was never something that appealed to me from the beginning.
I didn't, and I think what my argument is going to be in this segment is just, I can't say I think they meant well. I just think that there are people out there that just have these insane expectations that don't know how video game development works, especially with such a small team at Hello Games.
In some ways, yeah, but he did lie. I mean, I don't think anybody can dispute that, right? I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
did he straight up lie, or was it the Peter Molyneux way of? Well, I mean, was it the Peter Molyneux way of just, I'm going to keep promising everything under the sun because you people are listening to me?
Well,
I'd say it's more Molyneux than Pitchford, for sure. More Molyneux than Pitchford.
I mean, the lies, I think, were there. I mean, I think the multiplayer thing to me is huge.
That's a flat out lie. Let's be real.
I mean,
I'm not going to admit.
And then I think his idea, maybe they rushed the release. That's the one benefit of the doubt I'll give him. Maybe they rushed the release, but if he knew that all these features weren't going to be in the game at release, I think it's his responsibility to say, fine, we'll sell it for $30 or $40. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard for me to justify cutting all the stuff they cut out of that game and then turning around and selling it for full price and then saying, oopsie, we didn't know that stuff wasn't going to be there on time, you know, and then hope that people...
Not even oopsie. They haven't said anything.
He didn't say anything. Nothing.
They've gone totally radio silent.
Yeah.
And this is going to come across as somewhat strange for some people. the whole No Man's Sky controversy and some other controversies have made me realize the value of having a good community manager online, because now we live in the times of the hype cycle, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. So if you're going to do marketing, you have to do it right, and you need somebody who can respond to what the community's saying when it's going on, who can clarify issues as they arise. And Sean Murray didn't have anybody to, keep him in check and to clarify his statements and to say, Murray misspoke here. He didn't mean to imply this. He really meant to say this is going to be in the game, but not that. Nobody's keeping this guy in check, and that's how we ended up with a whole bunch of disappointed, angry fans.
Yeah, and the fact that they're taking returns on the game, regardless of how much you played it, really kind of gets into the fact that what was promised wasn't delivered. Because nobody's going to let you return a game otherwise, So I think a lot of people are having good points that, if you look at somebody put together a video and it's really damning evidence. I mean, it's just him saying all this stuff that just not only is it some of the things, I can get why maybe, docking on asteroids didn't make it into the game. Okay, that kind of stuff happens all the time. But there's other stuff that he directly says, like hacking into a doorway, just not in the game. These giant system fights that are in the game, not in the game. During his E3 presentation, he does this whole spiel at the beginning of it where he's like, I'm just going to pick a random system and go to it. I'm just going to pick a random system, and we're going to go there, and we're going to see whatever happens there. And he goes there, these giant, beautiful animals. They look like dinosaurs. There's this war going on in orbit. Somebody gets into the PC files for the game, and they find that E3 presentation. I mean, literally, like, it is a pre-recorded presentation that they left in the game's files and forgot to take it out. So all that, I'm just going to go to a random spot and show you guys what's going on, all bullshit. And I mean, I don't see how you get away with that type of stuff in this day and age. It's a huge game backed by Sony, which is, not nobody. Lots of exclusive money got thrown at this game, and then when it comes out, it's a huge disappointment on so many levels. I didn't buy it only because I went through this before, and the game was called Spore, and it felt, and everything just aligned exactly right, where it just felt exactly like that game. And I knew to dodge it because the hype and the promises just weren't aligning with anything that I thought could be realistic. And I mean, I saved myself $60 there. But yeah, I have a feeling that this company's basically done at this point for what they did. That kind of goodwill will never be won back for gamers.
Well, speaking of Peter Molyneux, he does that with every game with his overpromises, and people still buy his games. Somehow.
Yeah. Did anybody actually buy Godus?
I backed it, but I didn't buy it. I backed it for what was the minimum buy-in, $5 or something like that. But I didn't.
Or your name in the credits or whatever.
Yeah. Whatever gets you the free copy of the game, but I would never buy one of his games. The only reason I backed it was because at the time he had this big plan, and it was like, if you back now, you basically get every game that we release for free from here on out. And I thought, it's kind of a gamble. The guy's burned me before, but I think it was $10 buy-in. I was like, okay, who knows? Maybe this is the game that puts him back on his feet. And no, sure enough, wasn't. But
I mean, 22 games is basically dead now.
Yeah, well, speaking of community managers, they hired a guy, the only guy who still believed in them on the forums, made him the community manager, then fired him. I mean, you want to talk about that? The worst community manager. I know we were talking a little about this. Have you got any of you guys played Destiny or ever around launch?
Never played Destiny, but I've heard of some of their woes.
Yeah, so at launch, lots of problems. And their community manager was this guy his name was, I think it was Deej, D-E-E-J. And he was a very big, way back in the day, Bungie fanboy on the forums, really popular there. And so they make him community manager. And he would just write this, purple prose, flowery, how great this game was type messages to the community once a week. And never really get into any of the problems with the game. It'd be a beautiful sunset today highlights my office as I write to you about the greatest things this game has ever done. And
my God.
People would just be like,
unless that sunset is in the game, I don't give a shit.
People are like, are you gonna fix fucking matchmaking or what? Who cares about this? And if you go back and read all his community letters, it's just so weird because you really feel the disconnect. And if there should be a very minimal disconnect between the community manager and the community, right? Like, they should know what the current mood is and kind of reflect that in how they talk to you. Like, if everybody's up in arms over stuff, they don't want to hear about the coffee you're drinking, or, you know...
Like, what they want to hear is, I will bring your concerns to the higher ups. And ideally, the community manager is somebody who has a little bit of pull within the company.
Yeah, not just some guy who posted on the forums a lot, right?
You don't want somebody who's just feeding the community members pablum. You want somebody who can actually, suggest things to the higher ups, and maybe they'll take what the community manager is saying into consideration. Maybe they won't, but at least they should have that person should have the higher ups' ear.
I guess I don't care how good that game was, or especially wasn't at launch. You don't say that, period. Like, don't say flowery language about a video game. I mean, I think that's kind of a problem that many of those type of people have. Is just, like, again, you just have to realize you're talking about a video game. You're talking about a media product. Flowery language just doesn't cut it. It's going to especially look terrible and awful and fake when you have a large group of your community saying, this isn't good. We want some fixes.
Yeah, for sure. They really need to, as Kappa suggested, they need to tone their words. Tone is not a verb. They need to
close enough.
Close enough. They need to keep their words at the same sort of tone as the community. Otherwise, they appear separate from it and not in a good way. So another topic within marketing that I think we might want to discuss is, do you guys think that marketing as a whole for video games does a good job of representing them? And relatedly, does it do a good job of selling you personally on games?
I'm trying to think of specifically like games that I really just made me advertising where I went out and went from 0 to 100 on a game. Trailers to me are at kind of where I'm at right now. Trailers to me do almost nothing for me, even if they're not showing gameplay. Most games I think are really poorly represented in what do they call them, bull shots?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you've been around in gaming long enough, you learn to sniff a lot of that stuff out. Like, okay, no way is the game going to look like that. But I think the only thing that marketing ever really does is build hype for something that may or may not ever exist in any kind of form like that. But the good thing is if once you start drawing interest, that's your chance to kind of start moving people one way or another on your game and showing what you're about. But no, I can't really think of many experiences when I just saw a game advertised and went out and bought it. For me, it's like the start of a process where, okay, I like this game, I'm gonna start following it, I'm gonna start paying attention to what people are saying about it, look up the publisher track records, what's the dev team on it, you know what I mean? Like it's like if Blizzard comes out with a game tomorrow, I'm buying it, right? But anybody else, I don't know, I gotta look into it a little.
And I'm like that too, because I just don't have time to devote to 10 different games anymore, especially since I get into a lot of longer games. So generally I'm going to get a game I know I'm going to enjoy. So something that more reviews have told me over marketing. The only good marketing that sold me on a game was Deus Ex Human Revolution, because Invisible War burned me kind of hard.
Yeah.
So actually,
I don't think anybody on this podcast enjoyed Invisible War,
even though you haven't played it.
I played with the basketball for about 20 minutes. That was more fun than the rest of the game.
Oh dear.
The game is such a mess for reasons we can get into a little later.
So actually, seeing the good marketing, especially that Icarus trailer for Human Revolution, yeah, it's not a gameplay trailer, but it showed me they were actually going to spend time and effort that they totally didn't in Invisible War. Actually convinced me to buy Human Revolution at the start. Also,
and that game turned out really well. I mean,
yes.
I think it turned out really well, but I don't know how you feel. Yeah, and it feels like that game is the proper continuation of the Deus Ex legacy, rather than Invisible War. Even if Invisible War shared more mechanics with the original Deus Ex, Human Revolution still feels more like a Deus Ex game to me.
Well, that's kind of what I'm talking about, where it starts a process. When you see a trailer at E3, or you know what I mean, it starts the process. Okay, let me get a little bit hyped about this game, because who knows what I'm actually going to be seeing. And you start to look at, okay, what does the developer put out already? Who's working on this? Who are the writers? Who are the whatever? And you do a little bit of digging. You think, oh, okay, man, I really like the writing in, Wasteland 2. It's cool to see this guy working on this project. Or I remember specifically when I saw that the quest designer from the Dark Brotherhood quest in Oblivion was going to be taking on a lot of the quest writing in, I think it was Dragon Age 2. I was like, oh, okay, cool. That was one of my favorite quests. It's good to hear that, this guy's moving on. But that's kind of how I try to follow people. It's kind of similar how I follow comic books, right? Like, I'm less of an X-Men fan and more of a, name a comic book, that I really like. I'm more of a Matt Fraction fan than I am a Batman fan or whatever. So I tend to follow people and studios and things like that rather than just games that I think, or genres I think I'm going to like.
Yeah, it seems like a smart way to do it because it's really the talent in the end behind the keyboard that's going to produce the product. And I mean, not to shit on games, but really everything else is sort of the trappings. And as long as you don't have any aversion to the particular trappings, if the people behind it are good, I think the game you're going to enjoy it. So, I mean, to answer the question of whether I think marketing does a good job representing games, I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I agree.
But
there are exceptions.
Yeah, here's where I'm at. And I will actually highlight an exception in a little bit. I don't think trailers are good representations of the final product. Because trailers, they mainly focus on like cutscenes and action and explosions. They don't show you much gameplay footage. I want, like, when I see a game, I want to see what it looks like to play it, so I can imagine how I'd feel when I'm sitting down to play it myself. And I mean, I'm not so naive as to think that marketing doesn't affect me, but I'm sort of, becoming numb to trailers. Like, they just sort of pass me by, like, oh, there's an explosion, there's the guy speaking in a gravelly voice, there's a dude in a trench coat, whatever.
It's kind of like how I don't understand, in every E3 they have like the presentation of the the Call of Duty game of the year, and it's just someone sitting there with his gamepad, and I'm just like, what am I supposed to take from this? You're doing, hey, scripted sequence, cool, and it's kind of like that in a strange way.
Yeah, even that is for me a little better because that's actual gameplay, right? But when it's just like a cinematic trailer or just like cut up from cutscenes, what does that tell me about, what the experience will be as I interact with this product?
Yeah.
Well, I know in one case, this reminded me a lot because I talked about Xenosaga earlier and how the trailer for episode 3 was just big swelling music and a lot of these cutscenes, and as I was playing the game again, I was telling myself, wait, these are pretty heavily spoilerific things. Like towards the end and everything, I'm like, wow. And so you didn't know that in when you first started, but I thought that was kind of funny, all in all.
Yeah, marketing. I feel like marketing doesn't communicate enough with the dev team sometimes.
Yeah, I agree.
Like the dev team knows what the the strengths and weaknesses or what the focal points of their product are, and marketing just seems to sort of pass that by and say, well, where's the scene where you blow up the gasoline factory? Let's show that.
Yeah, but that's any kind of trailer for movies or games. It's always the same thing. They want flash. They don't care if they're spoiling the end of the movie or the game.
Yeah.
They don't care if they're actually conveying the plot.
I feel like that can work sort of in isolation. But if everybody's showing you flash, if everybody's showing you explosions and gunfights, I feel like the public is eventually going to stop responding to that.
Yeah, it definitely I mean, I know for me particularly, like I'd zone out in those types of E3 trailers. Like I'm more interested in like a Civ 5 or a Civ 6 E3 trailer at this point than I am anything else, Show me new design, show me new mechanics inside of a game I already know, things like that. That's what I'm more interested in than seeing almost any of this other stuff, which is just, to me, it just feels like, okay, cool, the generic white guy with the slick back hair doing cool guy stuff, blowing up things. Okay, well,
Or the Dishonored.
Yeah, I do that in my spare time. I'm not even white, and I do that in my spare time.
Yep, that's in the game, all right.
The Dishonored 2 trailer, which I'm going to go on a limb and say it was not gameplay footage, but it looked like gameplay footage and showed off new abilities for Elizabeth, so you're getting an idea of what's actually going to be coming in the game.
Yeah, there's more to talk about besides that looked cool. Like, oh, well, I guess you're going to get to play as Elizabeth. And, like, I remember when they announced Assassin's Creed Syndicate, we were like, oh, okay, there's a female assassin. I guess that you can finally animate them now. And, it's a brother and a sister, and there's guns now, and there's all this other stuff. So,
Emily Douglas, by the way.
Yeah. But, yeah, I think they're trying to do a little bit more with trailers that work to show you more behind it other than just looking cool, which is a smart thing to do, I think.
Yeah, so one thing that a lot of marketing teams have started doing, and I wish they would publicize this a little better, is that they show off huge chunks of gameplay footage before a game comes out. We were talking about Dragon Age Inquisition earlier. They streamed like 4 or 5 times for a couple hours each time. And it really gave me a sense of what playing the game would be like. And it was fairly true to what actually playing the game was like. And it really sold me on the game. The devs behind Planet Coaster are doing it right now. They're doing lengthy streams of coaster design and park management before the game comes out. And that's helping sell me on the game. And maybe the game will be garbage when it comes out, but from what I'm seeing of what they're building, it looks fun to me. And I'm probably going to get it. But it does work both ways, though. It can be a bit of a risk. For example, before Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth came out and Star Ocean Integrity and Faithlessness, another JRPG, came out shortly afterwards. So I watched gameplay footage for both of them before deciding which one to buy. And the Digimon Story had really appealing gameplay footage to me. I'm like, this is your standard turn-based JRPG combat. Looks like Persona. I'm into this. I watched Star Ocean, and it reminded me of the worst parts of Tales of Hysteria. So I was like, I'm not going to get this. And then looking at reviews afterwards, it seems like I made the right choice. So showing gameplay footage, I think, helps people make decisions. I've never looked at gameplay footage, like actual gameplay footage, not like fake, shitty gameplay footage, like Colonial Aliens, Colonial Marines. Like real gameplay footage. I've never looked at it and made a bad decision based on it.
I did want to make one example of a non-gameplay sort of video series that really worked because it was kind of an unfamiliar situation and it had a very trusted brand behind it. And that was the Portal videos, like the Aperture Science, instructional videos routine thing they were doing.
Was that for the first Portal? Or, I assume it's for Portal 2.
Portal 2.
Yeah, because Portal just was like this extra in the orange box.
Right, but it was just like hey, we're going to shoot holes here in the wall, and then you jump through them, and it all in this clever like instructional video sort of routine, and I thought that really worked because it was, hey, we have this very simple concept, and we're gonna push it to you slowly throughout the game, and it just didn't I thought that worked really well.
Yeah.
The other thing those videos did is that they sell you on the game's sense of humor. And that's a huge part of what makes Portal 2 what it is.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah, so again, it goes back to you want to sell players on the foci of your game. What are the key parts of your game? Identify those, and that's what you're going to want to present to people. Not just, explosions and titties.
Because those are in Portal in all ways possible. No,
yeah. Yeah, probably not the best example to jump off of for Portal. Again, nothing against explosions and titties, but have a little respect for your audience.
Right.
At the end of the day. So are there any other examples of good marketing or dishonest marketing that you guys wanted to mention?
I really wanted to talk about. I forgot the time period. I can probably look it up right now, but it was kind of like PS2 GameCube era as such. But back before Acclaim died, they had some really questionable advertising campaigns. I remember back.
Mortal Monday.
No. Mortal Monday was kind of cool actually. But no, what I was referring to was, I don't know if it was the first Shadow Man game or the second one, but they had like, hey, make sure, if we pay you money, you can win, put an ad on your gravestone for Shadow Man. Like, that was really a foretaste. And then there was the Turok game they released where they had somebody in the UK actually named their kid Turok. And another one was, I think they were publishing, the second Burnout at the time. And they said, hey, we will totally pay your speeding tickets if you, race to the store and buy this game. And it just, oh my God. And they just had a bunch of really questionable, I imagine it's detailed somewhere on the internet, but boy, for a while they were just tacky as hell with some of their advertising.
Speaking of advertising campaigns that border on the criminal, do you guys remember when Watch Dogs caused a bomb scare?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was. Oh man, was it in San Francisco?
I believe it was. I'm looking at an IGN article right now. It was in Australia.
Okay.
Yeah, they sent a.
It was a safe, right?
Yeah, they sent a safe to some company's offices, and the letter instructed people to check their voicemail.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and apparently there was a pin taped to the top of the safe, and the safe began to beep.
Oh man, what a terrible idea!
Why would you do that?
I don't know.
And how are they not?
I've been in marketing meetings before, and I'll tell you, sometimes people just get really excited about ideas, and you can't talk them down. So that's the thing. Only excuse I can give is I've seen that before, where people just start to kind of really spin out of control, and there's nobody in the room who will say no. And yeah, that's how stuff like that ends up to happen.
Not quite a game example, but you had Cartoon Network advertising the Aqua Teen Hunger Force movie right after the Boston Marathon bombing by putting a whole bunch of LED light-up boxes around various cities and causing bomb scares.
That's what I actually confused with the Ubisoft Watch Dogs thing. Yeah, I forgot those were two separate incidents. Which goes to show you, people don't learn. Oh God, yeah.
I was reading very quickly about how when Jet Set Radio or Jet Grind Radio, when it was released in the U.S., Sega actually had some graffiti artists in San Francisco, do some talents and such, with their graffiti, and the mayor of San Francisco went nuts and led an anti-graffiti task force removing graffitis from buildings a few blocks away and such. So, and that's kind of harmless, and that's the game. It's graffiti. You spray graffiti.
Oh God, yeah. And one time, speaking of other illegal things, EA actually mailed out brass knuckles to promote one of their games. I'm looking at this Kotaku article right now. It was Godfather 2.
Oh.
And brass knuckles are illegal in some jurisdictions.
Well, most, yeah.
Yeah.
Not a great idea.
Sometimes I wonder if marketers are from the same planet as me, and when stuff like this happens, I'm actually not so sure.
It goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. It gets you talking, right? Even the marketing failures are still successes. It's just that classic idea of as long as people are talking, And I've sat there, like I said, and I've heard people say, oh, you know what? Even if it doesn't fail, there'll be a lot of press on it, and that's kind of what happens with that stuff. Think about all these things that we still remember,
Yeah, but here's the thing: I haven't, with the exception of Watch Dogs, I haven't bought any of these games.
Oh yeah, but it's still marketing. It's more successful to have almost in some cases bad marketing than it is good marketing because. People just remember it, just sticks in your mind, and then, 2 years later, you still think about it.
But in the end, does it make a difference if I don't spend any money on these products?
I don't think so. I don't think it does to them, honestly.
Is publicity that valuable? Is publicity that doesn't pay the bills that valuable?
You might not spend money, but, if one person does, it worked.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Yeah. So that's video game marketing in a nutshell. We're going to completely switch gears now, and we're going to do a little special segment that we've never done before. we're going to do a trivia challenge that you can play along with at home. And then you can tell us what your scores were, and we'll laugh at you if you have a low score. I'm just kidding. Doesn't matter what your score is. This is just for fun. The way it's going to work is I'm just going to ask 15 general questions about video games. No categories or special questions for this one. Just 15 general knowledge type questions for video games. And we'll see whether Otakunomike, PT, or Kappa can get the most correct. I hope they're not too obscure. They might be too obscure. They might be too easy. We'll see. This is the first time I'm doing this. I was a huge trivia buff back in the day, but people always would complain that I'd ask questions that are too easy or too hard. We'll see if I've got the balance right finally. All right. You guys ready?
Oh.
Yeah.
So are we buzzing in? How are we going to handle this?
Whoever just yells the answer correct first.
All right. Chaos.
So, yeah. If you guys all talk over each other, then I'll just, flip a 3-sided coin.
There's such a thing. Great.
All right. First question. Which man who passed away in 2014 is credited with inventing the home video game console?
It's Ralph Baer, isn't it?
It is Ralph Baer. Is that you, PT?
Yes.
All right. That is 1 point for PT. All right, question number 2. What is the best-selling video game console of all time?
The NES.
PlayStation 2.
You said PlayStation 2?
I
I
did.
think it's the NES.
It was PlayStation 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah, who said that?
Me, Kappa.
Kappa. All right. 1 point for the Kappa. It was
PlayStation 2s are still selling, to this day.
they just discontinued it very recently. And it outsold the Nintendo DS by a few million. Nintendo DS is the second best-selling console of all time.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's now ask a question about a specific game. So I'm assuming at least some of you have played Super Mario 64. So can you tell me, in the first level of that game, Bob-omb Battlefield, how many times do you have to toss King Bob-omb in order to defeat him?
3.
3. Yes, that's right.
I think all of us said that.
PG got that really quick.
Yes.
All right. So PT's in the lead after 3 questions. Question number 4. What is the time limit for beating the original Prince of Persia?
An hour.
Yes, that is an hour. Is that PT again?
Yes.
PT's just kicking our ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. This
Casually
question's a
sitting here. Sorry.
continue kicking ass if it makes you feel good. All right. 5th question's a little bit of a funny one. Who composed the scores for Flow, Journey, Sunset, Abzu, and Leisure Suit Larry Reloaded?
Oh,
Yes,
boy.
all one person.
Yeah, I don't know anything about
Leisure Suit Larry
soundtracks.
Reloaded.
That's Wintry, wasn't it? Last name?
Yeah, Austin Wintory.
Yep.
Correct. 4 points now for PT. Man, you're doing really well at this. There are 10 more questions. All right, question number 6. In Shin Megami Tensei Persona 4, what is the theme of Risei's dungeon?
I don't know. Love.
She does have the Lover's Arcana.
Risei's Dungeon. Wow.
Have you guys have any of
No.
you played Persona 4?
Oh, yes.
No.
Yes.
I think only PT.
PT, you played Persona 4. Do
You guys get together and make a quiz real quick, or
Yeah, PT. Do you remember the theme of her dungeon?
Oh, boy. She was the celebrity. She was the Nada? Boy, it's gonna get me the moment I hear it, though.
All right, Google time. You can Google this the fastest.
What was her name?
Okay. R-I-S-E.
R-I-S-E. Often mispronounced as Rise.
It's a striptease dungeon. It's also Teddy's dungeon. That's right.
Yeah, it's striptease. It's the Maruku
God.
striptease.
Yeah, because she was the idol of the game.
Yep. All right.
I get idol out of my head. It's like, oh.
So not only do you know a lot about video games, you're also fast at Googling.
Yeah.
well, he at least knew how to spell the name.
I knew
We
to
were all
spell
like,
her
Rain.
Like Korean pop star.
Yeah.
A Mortal Kombat name. not a Persona character.
See, I don't actually even know Rain from anything except for Stephen Colbert going, Rain! That's what I know.
You didn't see him in the Ninja Assassin movie?
No, Rain was like one of the color-paletted ninjas that like shot lightning or something in the pre-reboot of Mortal Kombat.
He was in a movie. That's all I know. All right, question number 7. Which woman is credited with creating the King's Quest series of graphic adventure games?
Oh man,
Roberta Williams.
Yes, it was Roberta Williams.
she did all the Sierra stuff.
And see, it's funny because that's just the name that came up. It's like, I've never played those games, and from what I've read about them, they seem like not very fun in this day and age where, I mean, it was back in the day where like trial and error were just like king. No
Just
fun.
reload constantly.
Yeah, I mean, it was the series that gave Sierra its big start back in the day. And Sierra games were famous for being the kind of games we had to restart all the
One of the
time.
most bizarre things was King's Quest V got an NES port.
Really?
Yeah. I think it was 5, but
We'll look it up. We'll put it in the link dump, and we'll make sure to make a mocking joke about you if you're wrong about that. I'm kidding.
I believe I am right, actually, but yes. Absent
I'm
makes,
actually like checking it up right now to make sure.
I am actually, yes. Absence makes the heart go yonder. King's Quest V.
All right. Question number 8. While PT's busy with Wikipedia. As I'm sure you know, Mario made his debut in the arcade game Donkey Kong. But he wasn't called Mario at the time. What was his original name?
Jumpman.
I think Otaku got it. Got it first.
Hey, a point. I'm on the board.
Otakunomike. Did I call you Otakunomike for some reason? Otakunomike. I just like double Japanese your name. I apologize for that.
You crazy person, yeah.
All right. Number 9. Which famous hat wearer is the leader of the Villains International League of Evil, or Vile for short? You guys will kick yourselves when you figure it out. Famous hat wearer. Head of Vile.
Oh, Carmen Sandiego.
Yeah.
Okay. That's right.
Yeah. That is Carmen Sandiego. She is the famous hat wearer. Yeah.
I think no one lives forever for some reason. Like, no, that's a little obscure.
You're thinking what, sorry?
No one lives forever. Which was
That was harm. That was harm.
Right.
Yeah, except for nobody knows what harm stands for.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're in their way.
Yeah. All we know is that it's an acronym. No One Lives Forever is a great game that I wish could get a reboot at some point, but probably never happened. I think we talked about this on a previous podcast.
Yes, we did.
We're stuck in IP hell. All right, question number 10. From which awful video game does the meme "Your Winner" originate?
Big Rigs Over the Hill Racing.
Yes, it is Big Rigs over the road racing.
Over the road racing, sorry.
Okay, so the score stand right now at 1 for Otakunomike, 6 for PT.
2.
Oh, you got 2. It was Kappa that had 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I can't count properly. So it's 2 for Otakunomike, 1 for TheKappa, and 6 for PT. All right.
Yeah.
And if I've improperly kept track of the scores, I'm sure listeners will point that out to us and will laugh at us for not being able to count. But that's fine. Question number 10. From what video game does the broken English translation "All your base are belong to us" come?
Zero Wing.
Yes, it was Zero Wing. PT now on the board with 7 points. Question number 11. What is the name of your companion in Half-Life 2?
Alex Vance.
Full name. Yes, Alex Vance. Kappa is now at 2 points.
You guys can tell I didn't play a lot of console. I played a lot of PC, right?
Yeah, you're...
Like, Half-Life 2, like, they got an Xbox port, right?
Yeah, they did have an Xbox version of
Orange
that.
Box came out for it, but it might have been a little bit later.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the original Half-Life. Oh, wait, yeah.
I can't remember if the original Half-Life eventually got a console port. I think it might have, or at least I think one of the expansions did.
PS2 got the Half-Life port, and what became Blue Shift was going to be the Dreamcast port, but that got canceled.
Ah, okay, that sort of makes sense. All right, next question that I forgot as I was thinking of the question. Oops.
Our preparations are just keen in this podcast.
Yeah, we really prepared very much for this podcast. Oh, now I remember what I was going to ask. Speaking of the orange box, what is the name of the actress the voice actress who plays GLaDOS?
Oh man.
Oh boy.
I don't know. Voice actors never really.
I know I've heard her name, but I can't think of it offhand.
All right, Google time.
Ellen McLean.
It is Ellen McLean.
See, I knew it was Ellen, but I didn't know the last name, so I was hard on that one.
Yeah, sometimes it really sucks when you know the first name but not the last name, because the last name is what counts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that often ends up in some pretty weird territory. All right. Question number, I think we're at 13. Question number 13. What is the name of the protagonist in Life is Strange?
Never played it.
Is that Ellie?
Ellie is from The Last of Us.
Right.
I'll give you a hint. Shares a surname with a literary character who was a rebel.
Holden Caulfield? Caulfield?
Yes.
Is that right?
Caulfield is her last name.
Oh.
Her first name was Max. I'll give it to you. It's good.
Yeah.
I actually haven't played that. I do have it on my... I've been meaning to play some adventure games. I have a lot of adventure games on Steam I need to play, and that'd be one of them.
Yeah, that is actually a really well made game. It's occasionally a little awkward and a little cringy, but on the whole, I think they really succeeded in making what I call the equivalent of a CW show in video games, and I mean that as a compliment.
Right.
You sound skeptical.
No. I've heard things like that before. Like, it's very... This is like one of the more realistic portrayals of kind of high school and that general thing. I've kind of heard. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it feels... It's the one game I've seen that depicts cliques in a way that's somewhat accurate. Because the way you see cliques in typical high school fiction is that, you know, you've got your jocks and you've got your nerds, and never the twain shall meet. But that's not really how high school is. It shows that the boundaries of social groups are kind of fluid, and it's the first piece of fiction I've seen that really does that well. All right. So the next question I'm going to ask is about a little game that you might have heard of called Donkey Kong. Specifically, Donkey Kong 64.
Oh boy.
I heard the groans the second I said Donkey Kong 64. Do you guys have bad experiences with it?
Oh, I love it.
You're probably gonna name about like one of the 17,000 characters.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna ask you to name 17,000 characters. I'm gonna ask you to name 5. Name the 5 Kongs that you can play as.
Dixie Kong, Cranky Kong.
Already wrong.
Oh.
Donkey, Diddy, Dixie.
Already wrong.
Really?
Maybe you can't play as Dixie. I don't know.
Can't use Dixie. All right, so Otaku, it's all you.
I never played 64. I played all the countries. I didn't get to 64.
All right,
The,
Google.
the worst thing is it's sitting in my basement, so my wife has it, but she's not home right now to ask her.
Well, okay, this is a free one for you because we both got it wrong. We both got it wrong. So just feel free to Google it at your own, peril.
Yeah, Google at your own pace, or use the phone a friend lifeline. Your wife counts as a friend. It's all good.
It's definitely Diddy. 100%
Definitely
about
Diddy.
I know you can play as Donkey. Candy Chunky?
Nope, can't play as Candy.
I just googled the characters in the game.
Candy is in the game, but you can't play as her. So the answers are Donkey, Diddy, Chunky, Lanky, and Tiny. Tiny is the female Kong you guys are missing. You can play as Chunky Kong. He is portrayed as very dim-witted in the game, but also very powerful.
Aren't all the Kongs dim-witted in those games?
Yeah, basically.
Tiny is supposed to be intelligent, but I'm not sure. But yeah, they're all pretty dumb. Their main thought process is, where are the bananas?
Based on that Donkey Kong Country cartoon, which by the way exists and it's terrible.
Oh, you mean the 3D animated one?
Oh my god.
Oh, that exists. I've seen it. It's so bad.
It exists. It's the worst thing ever. Well, not the worst thing ever, but it's dreadful.
I've seen the Zelda cartoon. It ain't getting worse than that.
No.
So it could get worse. Excuse me, princess was at least like a semi-funny catchphrase.
I actually, someone recently on a stream I was watching just replaced all of Link's dialogue with like his grunts from Ocarina of Time.
Oh God. Okay.
And it works actually pretty well, actually.
All right. I feel like we should do a segment one time on just like bad video game to cartoon adaptations, because we could go on and on about like how shitty Donkey Kong was or how stupid the Zelda cartoon was. And like all the Sonic cartoons that they keep trying to make.
Oh, there's our Sonic reference. We almost got away with it.
You go a single podcast without shitting on Sonic somehow. One day, Gearbox will be in charge of Sonic, and then we'll just have a field day. All right. So, final question that I swear I have written down and didn't just think of right now. What is the name of Guybrush Threepwood's wife in the Monkey Island series?
Elaine.
Oh God.
Yes, it is Elaine.
It is
TheKappa, right?
Yeah.
All right. It is Elaine Marley. So, to final scores, not a complete blowout for PT, but he still wins with 7. Then we have Kappa with 4 and Otakunomike with 3. So that was fun. We got a little trivia challenge in, and there were no hiccups whatsoever in recording it. None at all.
Seamless.
Yeah, it was completely seamless, and I didn't have to make up questions off the top of my head for the second half of this.
And I totally didn't get like 10 of the questions right.
Yeah. There's no version of history in which PT had a total blowout. All right. So this was a fun podcast. I think it went pretty well. Any closing thoughts you guys have?
Again, I thought this was a really good podcast. I'll be happy to do it again soon if you ever need me.
What do you mean again? This is the first time we've done this closing.
Well, I meant that I've been on the last 4 now, I believe.
Yeah, this is the 4th podcast. Soon you're going to blow out everybody else in podcast count as well. Like, you're somehow going to surpass me. I don't know how. You will.
I think I'm pretty much the co-host at this point. I don't think anybody else wants to deal with editing, especially the way this thing records everything.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, Kappa basically just, like, takes a sound file, applies a filter, and it's all good at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's it.
It never has to splice together, like, 5 different files.
I think one day Merve is not going to be here, and I will host the show, and Kappa will be just the co-host podcast person.
That's going to happen one day. Like, one day I'm just going to fall violently ill the day we're supposed to record, and then midway through I'm just going to, like, run to the bathroom and never come back, and then PT will take over as host.
I don't think anyone wants that, to be quite honest with you.
It would be a very Metroid and Zelda filled podcast.
I would legitimately try.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with Metroid and Zelda. I'm all in for that podcast.
That is
we could do like an entire podcast of Metroid and Zelda. I have nothing to contribute because I've never played a game from either series, and that is my secret shame that I'm admitting right now.
Well,
in addition to having the Digimon soundtrack, I've never played a Metroid game. All right, so I think it's time to call this podcast to a close. We discussed a lot of fun things, some video game marketing, we did some trivia, we got serious for a second there for some reason, and I think this was a good podcast on the whole. Yep. So, good night, everyone, and thanks for listening.
Good night. Thanks.
Thank you.